Welcome to Leader U by Black River Performance Management, where we believe work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. In this leadership podcast, we will dive into the lived experiences of people flourishing in today's workplace and beyond. Join us to hear real-life examples of experiences from our own lives and from the leaders we know and trust. Successful organizations are dependent on people being competent in their job. To prepare people to do the work, we must prepare them according to the skills, knowledge, and abilities required for the job, correctly and consistently. One of the services Black River offers is evaluating employee and candidate competencies. Our 25 competency assessment focuses on the soft skills, or what we like to call them, essential skills. Our competency assessment is used for more accurate hiring practices as well as for staff development. Every organization could use these competencies to ensure an individual's skills match the soft skills required by the job, to nurture the right talent, to improve productivity, and to develop dynamic leaders. For a sample of the 25 leadership competencies, definitions, and assessment, email us at info@blackriverpm.com. Good morning, and thank you for listening to the Leader U podcast. I have the pleasure of introducing a great friend and an amazing woman leader in the state of Idaho and nationally. Diane Bevan is the founder and CEO of the National Women's Business Community Network Foundation and is driven by her passion for empowering women in entrepreneurship. With a focus on bringing inequities, she champions women-owned businesses, women-led nonprofits, and the nation's women's business centers. As former CEO of the Idaho Hispanic Chamber and Foundation, Diane recognized diverse communities' barriers and founded the Idaho Women's Business Center and Idaho Connect programs. Her leadership secured nearly $10 million in grants for Idaho, catalyzing change. Diane's commitment to her community service is evident as an urban renewal commissioner and the Idaho Rural Success Summit chair. Her dedication shines through in her involvement in creating nonprofits, notably Idaho Women for Education. Her passion nonprofit focused on at-risk women and girls. She earned accolades like Idaho Business Review's Top 50 Women of the Year, CEO of Influence in 2021, and a spot among Idaho's topmost 50 influential business leaders in 2022. She received the prestigious 2022 Marcia Bailey Leadership Award from the Association of Women's Business Centers. Diane loves it when her friends become friends and believes success is often just one connection away. Thank you, Diane, for being on the podcast today. I'm super excited to pick your brain and to have just some really meaningful conversations today about what's been going on with you and all the changes and the catalyzed change. And I'm just excited to have you. So excited.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. So we both have a passion for helping women, and I think it's evident in our bios, and we had a conversation yesterday that was just kind of preempt to what we wanted to talk about, and I just left feeling energized, and I want you to know that I really do admire you, and I think that all the work you're doing in the state and nationally is incredible, and I want to be around women like you, because I think together women that are pushing to help in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also in just the realm of helping women to be in boardrooms and to be, in the C-suites. And, we are the fastest growing population, women, in leadership. And I really am excited to talk to you, and I think this is gonna go a long time, so we may break this into two podcasts, because I want to talk about women in leadership and what you're doing and what changes have happened. And then I also want to talk about influence, since you are such a huge influencer, and how you really crafted that skill, and how you can give others tips on that. So let's start off with sharing your story and how you kind of got to where you are today.
Wow, thank you so much, and thank you for the really graceful introduction. I look at the me today, and I think, what would the little girl say that she was going to be when she became an adult? And I think about growing up in a small farm town in rural Oklahoma, one of 6 girls, no brothers. And we were kind of like on the outskirts of town. So if you can just imagine a small town and then there's the outskirts of town. And, we money was never plentiful. So, that's my nice way of saying that, a lot of times we were a little bit poverty stricken. But, what's interesting about growing up in the South is you definitely see the racism, you see the inequities, you see the town that I grew up in was still very segregated by black and white. There was the right side of the tracks, the wrong side of the tracks. But when you were a white family, but in poverty, it's like you still didn't fit in with certain places. So I think I remember at a very young age, realizing that life wasn't fair. And there were just like some people got more privileges than others. And that just kind of like, I remember like one of my earliest memories is that just didn't sit well with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I grew up, like I've always kind of had this like ingrained desire to help other people succeed and overcome barriers and to get out of that cycle of not having a seat at the table or being overlooked for that board seat. And so, I think about like some of the inherent traits that we all have are certainly a derivative of our experiences growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, fast forward, and then I can remember being the stay-home mom in a room full of business professionals. And I remember going to the first company party. My husband worked for a big firm, and I had this little baby in a stroller. And I was so grateful that I didn't have to go to work because he worked. And I remember someone saying, "Oh, you're just a stay-home mom." And I'm like, "Oh, dang it. Like I'm just not enough. I'm still not enough."
Mm-hmm.
And then I started working, and I remember owning a business and being a wedding planner, because I've also gone down the entrepreneurial path and I owned an event center. And I can remember it was my turn to bring cookies to school, and I'm running in there and I'm like late because I had a meeting with a bride's mom and a bride, and I had to go buy cookies at the grocery store. And I walk into this elementary school with these stay-home moms with these beautiful displays of cookies. And then all of a sudden I was on the other side and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, those are store-bought cookies. And then I'm like, oh, I'm still not enough. And so that desire to help women and to help like really understand how we can just be really thrive in who we are at the time that we're living in, I think it's just been layering upon me
Mm-hmm.
my entire life, because I have this entire vision of every stage feeling like I'm just not there. I'm not enough. I didn't make the grade. I didn't make the cut. And so now being in a position where I can control creating those opportunities to open the doors and kind of level the playing field a little bit.
Oh man, I love that. You're speaking to me. I've been in those same positions where I've been the stay-at-home or the working mom, and you're right. It's just you can't do anything correctly, like in the eyes of society, right? What if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're not working, you don't have value. If you're working, you don't care about your kids, which those aren't really those really don't exist. It doesn't have to be black or white. It really can be a blend of what really works for you in the season of life that you're in. And I love that you bring attention to that, because I think if you've never experienced it, whenever we experience things, we end up becoming more empathetic towards others.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, women tend to have a little bit lower self-esteem of themselves. And of course, I think that, I'm old enough that I remember the pre-internet, the pre-Facebook,
Hmm.
and where we are today.
The
And we tend
MySpace.
to really, yeah, MySpace, yeah. But I think other people see us. I think those stay-at-home moms were not mean-spirited. I don't think that they were trying to hurt my feelings. But the story I told myself is I was late and I didn't bring, the right thing. And so I think that kind of like what you say is so true, that, obviously women are going to be the hardest on themselves than
Hmm.
anybody will ever be around them. But how can we help them change that narrative and really see that value that everyone brings to the table? Everyone has strengths. Everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when I'm doing a coaching with women, whether they're a student, someone straight out of incarceration, or an executive, because I've coached at all those levels, that's a constraint that we have to learn to overcome, and that constraint of not being enough. It's very consistent among the women, and it's something that men face too. But we're talking about women today in this particular podcast, and not being enough. When you see the world through that lens, exactly what you just said. You tell yourself the stories, and you're actually harder on yourself than the other people. Just one little comment can send you in a backward spiral of not feeling like you're enough, and that's not a truth. And I think we have to have enough intellectual humility to recognize that our beliefs might not be the truth. They're a belief.
Yeah, one of my favorite books is The Four Agreements. And when I'm ever, and so, if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't listened to the book, The Four Agreements, please go, listen to that. I don't even know who the author is. I'm sure that you'll know.
Ruiz. It's
Yeah,
Ruiz. Yeah.
yeah. But, when I feel that, even as a leader today, there's never a time when you're immune to having those days or those bad weeks or those bad months or those bad years. And so one of the things that I have always tried to do is when I feel like I'm in that struggle moment, I'll take out 4 pieces of paper and I'll write the 4 agreements and I'll tape them across my monitor to remind me to not make assumptions and to not take things personally. I love the speak your truth and the do your best, but to me, the 2 that I have to remind myself is, what? Don't take things personally and don't make assumptions about other people. And I feel like that if, as leaders, we can really hone in on those 2 things, we would all feel a lot better. Because, even when you're a leader, you still think you're not enough and you're not making all the right decisions. But I want to go back to something that you had said when you were talking about whether you're working with someone who is, reentering out of incarceration or whether you're working with, a C-suite CEO. During the pandemic, I decided to go on a statewide tour. And I know people are going, why would you go on a statewide tour when it's during the pandemic? But as we were starting to come out and we had these huge I never forget, up in Moscow, Idaho, we used a gymnasium and we set people so far apart, following all of the, CDC guidelines, but gosh dang it, we went to them because I have a belief too that sometimes you have to go where somebody is. You have to meet them where they're at. And so, that year, Susie Rios and we did 10 or 11 events all across the state. And we were meeting with these women from these very small rural communities, and they were freaking amazing rock star leaders. They just didn't know it yet. Right. And we're just like, where have you been hiding? Like, you should be leading companies and on committees and board of directors and so I think that a lot of it, and that's why I say that sometimes the difference in success can be just one connection, because when we find these amazing women that exist everywhere, identify what's holding them back, or maybe the whole you don't know what you don't know, which is cliche as that is, it's so true. And it's been just such a great it's just been a joy for me. Like, you can tell, I love what I do. It's just, it's so great when you can see someone that that you have the power to change their whole environment just by opening a door.
I keep getting chills on this, and it's not because I'm cold. It's because you're speaking my love language, and I just love what you're doing, and I love that too. I feel more fulfilled and fueled when I can help empower someone else. That is my purpose. My mission statement, or my why, is to just leave people better than I found them. And that might just mean by making them be seen or heard, or feel like they are not alone, that they have value. I don't know how it will always be, and if have I done it correctly every time, and all of those things. No, I fail miserably sometimes. I'm still human and make mistakes, and even though I teach this stuff, and I have to, the journey is forever. Like, we have to work on becoming better our whole lives and in the different phases of life. And if you think about, you shared so many transitional phases of your life, from being a little girl to, knowing what you knew, what you wanted to do, and then, being a stay-at-home mom, and now being, a middle age where you're absolutely have more power, you have more free time, you have more wisdom. And that's what I really want to tap into, is being around women that are wise. I've been listening to a podcast recently called Wiser Than Me, and a girlfriend shared it with me, and it's about interviewing ladies that are in their 70s and 80s, and they're sharing their wisdom. And that's what I feel like I'm getting with you is just I'm going to get a fire hose of the wisdom that you've learned and grown throughout the state. So let's kind of back up a little bit about where, what you've been doing. And your bio shares a little bit about but now you've got some transition. So you want to talk about what were you doing until just a couple weeks ago, and then now what it's transformed into.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. It was one of the hardest decisions professionally I've ever made. I had known for probably over a year that you call it my soul, my inspiration, my, gift from God, whatever that you call that, but I just was being pulled,
Mm-hmm.
that internal pull to do something bigger and greater, and not necessarily for more accolades. And I'm appreciative for the accolades and that I've received, but my why, to the same as your why, is really seeing other people succeed. But it was creating that inclusive ecosystem that really drives my soul. And so I had to kind of think, do I continually just try to lead efforts in Idaho, or do I look at a national platform? And just to preface that, having run to WBCs for the SBA, I have had the opportunity to mentor many directors all across the nation. And I've just fallen in love with the work that I was doing with Puerto Rico, and the work that I've been doing with North Carolina and Alcorn State, Mississippi, their HBCU Women's Business Center. And it was really pulling me. And I thought, I know that if I did this on a national level, that I could bridge the gap between some of the struggles of the centers and the federal government. And because there's just that space of, you get a brand new director that has a reporting period and she doesn't know how to fill out an SF424A, right? And so to be that mentor. And so it was just really pulling me there. And, the other thing too is when you get to create something yourself, you can make it whatever you want it to be. And with federal money, because it's taxpayer dollars, you really only serve entrepreneurship. And there are so many women-led founders. I've assisted many nonprofits in their initial baby stages of establishment. And so it was really those three pillars. Like, if you were to say, Diane, what is the one thing that you would want to do if you could just pick your next big thing? And it would be to serve women-owned businesses, women-led nonprofits, and the nation's women business centers. And so that's what I've chosen to do.
That's so incredible. Again, goosebumps. Like that's not to say that this has been easy the whole way, has it?
It hasn't.
Yeah.
Back in 2017, when I was first asked to come in as the CEO of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce as a non-Hispanic that still doesn't speak Spanish, I was the one putting the barriers on myself and feeling like you're not good enough. You don't understand the culture. You can learn. And it has been really hard. It's also been very beautiful, and I'm very blessed. But, I think that for me to truly learn empathy, I needed to experience what it was like to walk into the consulate and not understand the language and not have anyone in that entire room look like me. I need to have that experience. And I think that is what is really driving my next big thing, is to really look for those opportunities to change that narrative. And and seriously, last week I wrote a grant for high school students in Puerto Rico to participate in a program to help them go on to college. And I'm like, being able to have these opportunities on a greater scale than Idaho has been already a huge blessing.
Oh man, I just love it. We talked about this yesterday on the phone too, when you shared that same thing, this experience at the consulate. And I shared with you that I had a similar experience. I lived in Shanghai, China for almost 3 years. And when I lived there, I got that same experience where I was the foreigner. I didn't speak the language. And it's not even close. Like, it doesn't sound like Spanish. You can kind of wing it with the Spanish. We know a lot of Spanish words already, but Mandarin has its own characters and different, right? And so, and people would actually come get my groceries out of my cart to see what I was buying. They would pick them up and look at them and say, look at her like, what does that white person eat? And they would pet my kids and pet my children's hair, because it's touching their hair is good luck, the blonde hair, right? So these are things that I had to get used to. I felt like I was on display, right? And so I got so much empathy from that, and I started to realize, wow, it's really a big difference when you say you should learn to speak the language when you actually haven't done that, right? So I'm over there taking lessons. I'm trying to learn the language. I'm trying to learn what my kids might eat. I'm trying to figure out, they're in a international school, and that experience changed me forever. I mean, when I moved there, I was I'm an Idaho native, and I literally, it was just a complete change. And ever since then, my worldview has completely shifted into a way that I could never unsee, which is good because I think it's really helped me understand the challenges that people do face, and that, we need to be empathetic and be there for people and recognize that, life isn't fair. And it's not always going to be fair. It will never be fair, but we can find ways to help people in need and that are struggling and that want to make a difference.
It was so good. I'm so glad that you shared that. As you were talking, I was thinking about exactly what you said. It will never be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came to the realization that I could use my position, my influence, my connections, my relationships to open doors for those that could never get through otherwise, that's a good thing. However, it's even better if you can help that woman see her own self-worth and value and give her the courage and bravery to also open that door for herself. And I think that that is one of the things that I'm really focused on is how can I help underserved women see their potential and see the leader in them that I already see. And I think that's really important. I remember that day in the consulate after I can admit I went and sat in my car and I cried for a really long time, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
I have choices to make. I can walk away from this challenge that I have been put into this new world of working with a community that is not my own, or I can pick myself back up and walk right back in. And I'm so grateful that I took the latter choice, and it has not been easy,
Right.
but it's certainly been extremely fulfilling. There are some amazing women and even just amazing humans. I think that, the world will never see everyone as the same color skin, the same color hair, the same color, race, ethnicity, diverse community. But as we can become a people that is more accepting and not making those assumptions that someone isn't smart because we don't understand them.
Mm-hmm.
I know someone extremely intelligent, but because of his thick accent, I've been with him in person when people have treated him like he's ignorant.
Right.
And he's not. They just don't understand.
Right. And it means he speaks another language. That's what I always love is it's like they have an accent because they speak another language. And that's a good thing. They're able to speak two languages. And as somebody who's been trying to learn Spanish and has tried to learn Mandarin, I mean, I can get by on some basics, but it's not as easy as one would think. And it takes a lot of dedication and commitment. I love something that you said I want to go back to because we are aligned on this as well is I believe I always say everybody is a gem that just needs to be polished. And we're in the gem state, right? And I always say discovering Idaho's gems in the workplace. And because just like myself, I did not have these skills that I have now today. It took other people to believe in me. It took mentors. It took schooling, education. Like I said, so many people that believed in me when I didn't have the self-confidence. I wouldn't be where I am today without all of that. And so it's why it's important for me. I mean, I've done some mentoring through the Idaho Women's Business Center. We do Gate City Young Professionals. We like to help the youth. And I think it's super important in us, in our middle age, finding our purpose and, giving back once we have been through the ringers or earned our own lumps and learned the wisdom that we have, and we have more free time after our kids are kind of, raised and those kinds of things. It's so helpful and meaningful to give back and to share the wisdom that you have for those that are willing and will show up to their appointments and things, and because sometimes you mentor and the people aren't that interested in it. But when you really find somebody that wants it, that is such a good feeling for them and for you.
Oh, completely. When I decided to launch the national WBC network, it was not even an option to have a give back program. We came right out of the gates so I actually created it's two organizations. So there's the National Women's Business Community Network, and then there's the NWBCN Foundation. And I knew that we needed to have that foundational arm, because out of every dollar that comes in, a percentage is going to the foundation. If I could give out millions of dollars in grants and scholarships, I will. And so as that bucket continues to fill, then we'll be opening up many scholarships and grants. But you had said something about how, that you didn't immediately fall into the place that you're in today, that it was people that kind of had faith in you and believed in you. And, what I didn't share at the very beginning, and maybe this is a good way to kind of like close our discussion about this, is that, I also grew up in an extremely abusive, volatile home. And so when I was little, I kind of hid from it. But as I got bigger, I thought, okay, if I join a club, then I'm not at home. So I was actually president of the Spanish club, FHA, played basketball, was in home ec. I ended up being president of Future Homemakers of America. And why is that? Because I do believe now, as the adult me looks back, I believe that those teachers kind of knew what was going on at home, and they all put their arms around me, and they saw something in me as a young child that I was a leader. And so they gave me all of these opportunities to give speeches and to organize things. And so they truly are the reason that I am who I am today. And so my way of giving back is to identify who I can now help serve. And I must say, I think she's in her early 90s and she's on Facebook, but my first grade teacher still follows me on Facebook.
Oh my gosh, I love that story.
And everything I do, she comments, "Oh, Diane, I'm so proud of you."
That's incredible. So tell me a little bit more about what you're doing with Puerto Rico and these other groups, and what you're kind of how you plan to move forward that vision.
Sure. I think that it's going to be a common, through the platform where we want to host a lot of different types of tools and trainings, best practices, and we're going to utilize partners, much like yourself, to really bridge and to give opportunities for women to learn and to grow. But on the flip side, with the women's business centers, it's a very small federal grant, and they just don't have the resources that they need. And so I've been doing some coaching with the women's business center teams and their directors, as well as doing some grant writing. I am an accidental grant writer that's had a lot of success, and continually write grants on a weekly basis for some of these other areas. So I'm also working in Montana right now as well, and which has been really fun. There's a big difference between Montana WBCs and Puerto Rico. Yeah, I'm excited. I'll be in Puerto Rico actually in about 3 weeks and be on a stage. I'll be on a panel event at a women's conference there, and this is just kind of like, it's like doing the unthinkable. Like if you can dream it, you can become it. And I truly do believe that you can manifest in yourself what you want to be, and then figure out, reverse engineer that and figure out, what do I have to do to get there?
I love that. And I love Puerto Rico. I just wish I could fit in your bag. I'm going to have to make it a bucket list for next year, because I think I told you I've done led three mission trips there. I worked with, it was called, I can't think, Group. At the time it was Groups International, but then it went to Lifetree International. And so we just went there to help with the locals. We'd fix their houses up, elderly or people out of incarceration, or just people needing their housing and their, so it'd be like minor things like paint and cleaning up of landscape, fixing roofs, things like that. So I did that twice with my kids for their senior trip. Each of them and I went to Puerto Rico, and we served in a village called Calle up in the mountains. And I really, really love that. And my kids have such good memories of the people of Puerto Rico and just going there to serve. they also love the island and getting to explore and to go to the rainforest and to the beach. And San Juan is it's an incredible place. The people are incredible. The food is amazing. I'll tell you, so the people of Puerto Rico are some of the kindest, nicest people. And
Yeah.
that's what I love Hispanic culture, for sure. I mean, I spend a ton of time in Mexico and in Puerto Rico. I can't get enough, and it's because of the culture and the food.
I love that you said that they're kind because that would have been the same adjective that I will use is, I've been to San Juan 3 or 4 times, and every time I go, it's just they're kind. They're
Hmm.
just kind people, but they're also very humble. I think that they've experienced a lot of tragedy
Hmm.
because they right in the path of tropical storms, and so they're very appreciative for what they have because they know at any given moment, a huge wave can wash it away. And we really saw that like in St. Martin, St. Kitts too,
Hmm.
we had visited a beautiful area and then the next year it got completely wiped out by a hurricane.
Mm.
And so I think that's a part of it too. One thing that I have found with working with Puerto Rico too is there's a lot of resources in the way of grants and scholarships, but having grant writers to be able to be that structural side of putting all of the pieces and telling the stories
Right.
and getting the funding. So, they just need the funding to do what they do, but they need someone like me to come in and say, let me work with the awarding entity on your behalf. And so I see a lot of opportunity to be working there for quite some time.
Oh, that's incredible. I can't wait to hear more about that and what the plan is after you get there and kind of figure it out. One of the things that I did see that I'd never thought about before, because if you don't, you only know what you know, right? And you don't know what you don't know. When I was there serving, I realized there's an elderly population there that are lonely. This is why we were serving them, because their kids have went to the U.S. to work. And so they're back in Puerto Rico. They don't want to go to the US. They want to stay where they are. And their kids send money and things, but they're still alone. And so lots of loneliness and lots of need for help on their homes and things like that. So that was a lot of the population that we were serving. And I mean, the memories of some of the people, just like an avocado farmer, I can't even tell you the love that was shared during the times of being there, and just the amazing people. So, I keep me posted on the Puerto Rico stuff.
Oh, I will. They're also, they're very innovative. The women's business, and I think it's the only one that does this, but there is a required dollar for dollar match to the federal, non-federal. And the Friends of Puerto Rico, which is the organization that hosts the WBC, they created a line of coffee because they're thinking, what are our assets? So
Mm.
they bought a farm and they actually have a brand of coffee that they sell to make their match for their grant.
Oh
And I think
wow.
that is really cool because when I went to their last women's conference, they sell their coffee,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's how they're trying to become self-sustainable.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
so cool. So, what else do you have going on? Is like moving forward in the year? Just keep telling.
Well, I definitely want to make sure that, my amazing clients in Idaho and all of the stakeholders that I've worked with so closely are not going to be forgotten by Diane.
Mm.
It's hard because I love the state that I live in and I love the women that we serve here. And so there will be some news forthcoming, but I'm going to continue to really push the efforts for the Idaho Women's Business Center as well and to work with women. I'm dying to go on another statewide tour, but maybe it needs to be a nationwide tour. But right now, the next 3 months for me are to really kind of focus on some large grant opportunities that I'm working on for some entities, as well as growing the social platform. But what I love about running a national, it's called the collective community. It's not called a membership directory,
Mm.
but those that become a member of the collective community on our platform can, engage now on a national level. And I think we started with when you read my bio and you said that success is sometimes one connection away. I'll give you a really great example of
Mhm.
that. In the last year or last 2 years, one of my clients that I started working with, she's married to a gentleman from Micron, but she is originally from China. and she lives here, and she wanted to start a business because so many of her family members work in factories or own manufacturing
Mm-hmm.
factories. And she made a connection to a member of the Nez Perce tribe through our efforts. So, and she owns a gift shop. And it was like her first big order was like $5,000. And it was because of this connection of two people that never would have met otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So, I always like to say that I love it when my friends become friends, because that's when the magic really happens.
I love that. It is so important. And I really think that as women, when we are friends and truly authentic with one another and we really care about one another, we are a tide that can raise all boats. If we're doing well and we're helping one another, we literally can change the world because we are the highest, we're the largest demographic, middle-aged women, and it's growing. And so the more we get together and try to help raise one another and just like get to a place where we pay attention to what we buy, we pay attention to who we vote for, we pay attention to the things that matter, we help others that aren't as fortunate as us yet. We are, when we're doing that, everybody benefits, and including yourself. Helping others really helps you to fulfill your purpose and feel like you're not just on the treadmill, that hedonic treadmill of life, and on the rat race. Those are the things that are meaningful in life. I think earlier in our careers, we're focused a little bit more on success, what that looks like, and success means something different when you're younger. And as you get older, you start to think less about resume virtues and more about eulogy virtues. And
It's true.
yeah, and so I think it's where we are in life right now. This season of life is where this stuff is super important. And finding more people that want to do this kind of work, the more, the better.
Oh yeah. As you were talking, the word intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, you have to be intentional about your actions. And I think there's several reasons why when you're a little bit younger in your career, you're thinking about not even just the accolades, but getting the kids to school and to
Mm-hmm.
soccer practice too. You just have a lot that's occupying your mind. And maybe it's not a top of mind of how can I serve and how can I help
Mm-hmm.
others at the same time while I'm trying to just get through my own day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, it is the best years of my life right now because I can celebrate the success of my children as now that they're older.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not running into the elementary school with a box of Oreos anymore, but I'm looking for opportunities to help that entrepreneur that is trying to manage a business and busy children be able to find fulfillment. I think that we have you said we're the largest growing group, but it's also women are
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed at every stage of their life right now. It doesn't matter which client I'm talking to. That feeling of overwhelm is kind of like resonating to the top right now. And
Mm-hmm.
so, how can we, work smarter and not harder? Sharing is caring. Making connections and just helping each other get where they want to be and maybe not have as many barriers to get there. And I think that that's how we'll lower that level of overwhelm.
Yeah.
It's just not feeling like you're doing it all by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that we can do. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. And we are going to move into talking about a leadership competency. And since we've had such an amazing conversation, I'm going to break this into 2 sessions because I just wanted to talk to you about women and leadership and what you're doing and all the exciting things because I wanted to just share everything and all your wisdom. So I'm going to have you leave us with 3 tips or wisdom, things that you wish you'd known when you were younger for our listeners. It's kind of a gift.
Hmm. Well, I would say the first thing is asking for help is not a sign of weakness. When you're in any moment when you realize that it is bigger than you are, you have to look for resources and help,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be willing to ask for help. So I would say my first number one thing is always going to be is that have the courage to ask for someone to help you, because if you don't ask, the answer is no. I tell my
Yes.
kids that.
Yeah.
I would say the second one would be is to really be intentional about your efforts. We've talked about that today, is to, when you have an opportunity to stop by a market, be intentional about supporting young, growing, emerging entrepreneurs, and really showing it in your action. Go buy that pair of earrings that came all the way from Kenya that I'm wearing right now, and you just have to be intentional about your efforts. And it's one thing to say that you're a philanthropist, and it's another thing to show it. And so I would say the second one would be intentional. And the third one, I would just say, the best advice I could give some people is to just really dial into what makes you happy, because this life is really short. It can go in an instant. We saw that during the pandemic. We saw healthy people die, in weeks, that never ever thought that was going to be their last week on this earth. And so, I think the older I get, the more I really realize that it's important that I live in what makes me happy.
Absolutely. I really thank you for your time and for the work that you're doing in the nation, in Idaho. Keep it up and let me know how I can support you, because I'm cheering over here from the sidelines, kind of doing my own little version in the areas that I have influence over.
And thank you for all that you do. This has been I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show today, and I love seeing what you're doing. You're making some big changes in your little pocket of the state and nationwide.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of great work, Angie.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Did you know that Black River offers a learning management system with over 10,000 development topics? The Leader U Learning Management System is an affordable option that empowers organizations to manage and curate in-house learning development opportunities. The built-in calendar and scheduling system can be used to coordinate compliance courses such as HR Respectful Workplace and IT Cybersecurity, or lunch and learns on topics such as motivation, self-leadership, and leading more effective meetings. At Black River, we are dedicated to providing a learning solution that focuses on engaging employees in their own self and team development. Our clients use the Leader U Learning Management System to remove barriers through accessible and self-paced micro-learning content, save time with the centralized and automated training assignments, promote more meaningful team discussions, issue certificates of completion and track development efforts, and enhance and simplify onboarding efforts. Contact us for more information on our learning management system at info@blackriverpm.com.